She said she'd never disrespect, but I was the joke in her friends' group chat. When I first met Claire, she was all about respect. That was her word, the one she threw around like a cornerstone of her identity. Respect is non-negotiable, she'd say, and I believed her. We'd been dating almost 2 years, and in that time she made a point of reminding me how she valued the way I treated her, how I never mocked her in front of others or told stories she didn't want shared. She once told me, "I'd never disrespect you. Not even for a laugh." That's not love. I held on to that sentence like it meant something, because it did, to me. Claire was warm, funny, magnetic in social situations. I was quieter, more observant. Where she thrived in groups, I preferred small, intimate settings. But that worked for us, or so I thought. She'd pull me into her world, and I'd give her a safe place to land when the parties were over. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like balance. About a year and a half in, she invited me to a dinner with her close friends, people I'd met a handful of times before but didn't know well. We went to a trendy place downtown, one of those spots where the music is loud enough to make you lean in, but not so loud you can't catch whispers. I remember I was mid-bite when Claire launched into a story about how I'd tried going to the gym early in our relationship. She exaggerated the part about me struggling with the weights, adding little flourishes that weren't true but made everyone laugh. I smiled along because that's what you do. You don't kill the vibe. But something about the way they glanced at me, then back at her, smirking, felt off. The laughter had a sharp edge, not just amusement, but a little bite to it. I brushed it aside. Maybe I was being sensitive. The rest of the night went fine on the surface. Claire was affectionate, resting her hand on my knee under the table, stealing kisses between courses. But I couldn't shake that moment. It was like catching the faintest scent of smoke in a room and convincing yourself it's nothing, until later, when you realize the fire had already started. Over the next few weeks, little things piled up, subtle enough to dismiss if I wanted to. We'd be out with her friends and I'd hear her mention something about me that I'd told her in confidence, a minor embarrassment from work, a clumsy moment at home, and it would get the same reaction. Laughter, a few side eyes, and then quick changes of subject when I looked their way. Claire would squeeze my hand, smile like nothing was wrong. Once one of her friends joked about me always wearing the same hoodie. It was a hoodie I wore maybe once every couple of weeks, but the way they said it, like it was some running joke, made me wonder what else I wasn't hearing. Claire, meanwhile, seemed happier than ever. She was on her phone a lot, laughing at messages, tilting the screen away when I passed behind her. I told myself I was imagining it. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid boyfriend reading into nothing. She'd earned my trust, or at least I thought she had. One Saturday morning, we went out for brunch. The place was packed, and we ended up squeezed into a booth next to another couple. While waiting for our food, Claire scrolled through her phone, trying to hide her grin. "What's so funny?" I asked casually. "Oh, just a meme from Taylor," she said, turning the screen away so fast it was almost a reflex. I let it go, but my stomach tightened. The last time I'd seen that kind of reaction was when my buddy back in college was texting another girl behind his girlfriend's back. It wasn't the same situation, at least I didn't think it was, but the secrecy was familiar. That afternoon, I told myself I was overthinking it. She'd been nothing but loyal, and I had no reason to doubt her word about respect. But still, a little voice in my head whispered, "Pay attention." People don't hide things they're proud of. A couple of weeks later, she had her friends over to our apartment for a game night. I hung out for a while, but eventually went to the bedroom to read, letting them have their fun. I could hear laughter from the living room, bursts of it so loud I almost got up to see what was going on. I didn't. Later, when they'd left and Claire came to bed, she kissed my cheek and said, "You're such a good sport. I know my friends can be a lot." I smiled back, but there was something in her tone, a little too sweet, a little too rehearsed. That night, lying in the dark, I remembered how her friends had laughed at dinner, the way they sometimes looked at me when she spoke, like there was a punchline I wasn't in on. I told myself it was fine. If there was something more to it, I'd find out. For now, I just wanted to believe her when she said she'd never disrespect. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon, almost by accident. Claire had gone out for a run, leaving her phone charging on the kitchen counter. It wasn't unusual. She didn't like carrying it when she ran. I was working from home, half focused on a report, when I heard the soft chime of her phone. Normally, I wouldn't have even glanced at it, but the screen lit up and a preview banner appeared. It was a group chat called Queen Squad. The name itself didn't mean anything to me, just a cute nickname for her friends, I guess. But the preview froze me. My name, followed by a string of laughing emojis. My eyes flicked to the clock. She'd be gone for at least another 20 minutes. I told myself not to open it. I told myself this wasn't my business. But my heart was pounding, my stomach already twisting in ways I couldn't ignore. I tapped the notification. The first thing I saw was a meme, a photo of a guy in an ill-fitting hoodie, slouched on a couch, captioned, "Vibe check, 200% unemployed energy." Only it wasn't some random guy. It was me, sitting on our own couch wearing my favorite hoodie. Claire had taken the picture without me knowing. The comments beneath it made my ears burn. LMAO Claire. "You're savage. Girl, is that the same hoodie from last week? Tell him to get dressed like an adult, OMG." Claire had replied with a string of crying laughing emojis and, "He thinks it's his comfy look." My eyes darted upward, scrolling through earlier messages. The deeper I went, the worse it got. There were jokes about the way I cooked, the way I talked in my sleep, the fact that I liked certain corny 80s movies. Stuff I'd shared with Claire in quiet, private moments, things that made me feel safe with her, now tossed around like cheap punchlines. And it wasn't just her friends taking shots. Claire was right there with them, feeding the fire. She'd posted a picture of me passed out on a Sunday morning, hair sticking up, mouth open, captioned, "My man looking homeless." That one had a full thread of replies. There was another photo, this one from a party we'd gone to months ago. I'd been wearing a shirt she'd picked out for me, and she'd complimented me that night. In the chat, though, she'd written, "Tried to get him to wear something nice, but he still looks like he manages a failing bowling alley." Her friends had piled on, adding their own snide remarks. Each message hit harder than the last. It wasn't the kind of teasing you could excuse as harmless. It was mean, deliberate. And the worst part was realizing this had been going on for months. Scrolling further back, I found jokes from last year. I felt sick. All the times I'd walked into a room and felt a weird shift in the smirks I couldn't explain, the way they sometimes looked at me. It all made sense now. I wasn't part of the group. I was the entertainment. I sat there, phone in hand, my pulse loud in my ears. A dozen thoughts fought for attention. I wanted to throw the phone, smash something, walk out and never come back. But I just stayed still, reading, rereading, letting the truth sink in. One message stuck with me more than the rest. It was from just a week ago. Someone had asked if we were still going strong. Claire's reply, "Yeah, he's good to me, but you know I gotta keep the comedy content flowing." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I'd believed her when she said she'd never disrespect me. I'd defended her when people joked about her being too sarcastic. I'd let the little things slide because I trusted her. And now, here it was in black and white, screens full of proof that her respect had been a performance. A line she fed me while tearing me down for laughs when I wasn't looking. The front door opened. I heard her keys hit the counter, the sound of her water bottle being set down. My hands were still trembling as I put her phone back exactly where it had been. She walked into the kitchen, cheeks flushed from the run, smiling like everything was normal. "Hey," she said, leaning in for a kiss. "What's up?" I swallowed hard, forcing my face into something neutral. "Nothing," I lied, "just working." She didn't notice the way my voice had flattened. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. I watched her walk into the shower, my mind already turning over the question that wouldn't leave me alone. Do I confront her right now, or do I wait? The rest of that day was a blur. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, reading the same sentence over and over without taking in a word. My mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment of the last 2 years under a different light. It was like watching a movie you'd loved your whole life, only to find out half the scenes had been altered when you weren't looking. Every "I love you," every affectionate squeeze of my hand at parties, every "I'm so lucky to have you," all of it felt suddenly hollow. I'd thought those words were solid ground. Now they felt like a rug she'd been slowly pulling out from under me. I couldn't stop thinking about the details she'd shared. Some of those stories were things I'd told her in confidence, things I'd never even shared with my closest friends. I remembered the night I told her about being bullied in middle school for wearing hand-me-downs. She'd held my hand, told me she admired how I'd turned out, and yet in the chat, she'd used that same story as a setup for a joke about my thrift store wardrobe. The betrayal wasn't just that she'd laughed at me, it was that she'd handed pieces of my life over to other people to laugh at too. By the time evening came, I felt drained. She made pasta, humming to herself in the kitchen, and I sat across from her at the table, barely touching my food. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. That wasn't a lie. I was exhausted, but not from work, from her, from pretending I didn't know. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. If I confronted her now, I knew how it would go. She'd deflect, call it just jokes, say I was overreacting. She'd turn it around, make me the problem. But if I waited, if I let her dig herself deep, I could make sure there was no escape route. That thought scared me, the coldness of it. But I couldn't ignore the part of me that wanted her to feel cornered. The next few days were torture. Every time she picked up her phone and smirked, I wondered what my role was in the performance that day. Every time her friends liked one of her Instagram posts, I wondered if there was another screenshot floating in their group chat. I caught myself watching her the way you watch a stranger, studying, trying to understand her without the benefit of trust. On Saturday, we went to a mutual friend's barbecue. I noticed the way her friends looked at me now that I was aware of it. The quick smiles, the little nudges between them when I said something they thought was funny or odd. It was all there, written on their faces, only this time I knew exactly what it meant. Halfway through the night, I caught Claire glancing at her phone and biting back a laugh. She showed the screen to one of her friends, who covered her mouth to hide her reaction. It was like watching two teenagers passing notes in class. Only I was the punchline. I went home that night with my decision made. I wasn't going to keep pretending, but I also wasn't going to blow up in the heat of the moment and give her a chance to twist it. I was going to confront her calmly, directly, with everything I knew, and watch her try to talk her way out of it. The morning of the confrontation, I woke up before her. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and thought about the first time she told me she loved me. We'd been lying on a blanket in the park, her head on my chest. She'd looked up at me and said, "You're the safest place I've ever known." I'd believed her. Now, I understood that for her, safety meant something else entirely. Safety meant she could say anything, do anything, and I'd still be there. That belief was about to end. When she finally walked into the kitchen, She was wearing one of my old t-shirts, hair messy, looking like the girl I'd fallen for. She smiled at me, oblivious. "Morning," she said, reaching for a mug. I watched her for a long second before answering. "Morning." My voice was steady, but underneath my heart was pounding. I decided, today, she was going to see exactly how it felt to have the truth laid out in front of her. No punchline to hide behind. She sat down at the table with her coffee, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that the next few minutes were going to strip away whatever facade we'd been living under. I watched her thumb flick over the screen, her smile forming and fading as she read whatever was there. Probably them. Probably me. "I read your group chat," I said. My voice calm even. Her head snapped up. "What? While you were out running last week, you left your phone here." I saw the message come through. I opened it. Her eyes darted side to side for a split second, like she was searching for the right reaction. "So you went through my phone?" she said finally, her tone sharpening. I saw my name. I wanted to know why it was there with laughing emojis after it. I kept my voice steady, but inside my chest felt tight. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "It's just jokes, babe. You know we mess around with each other in that." "Messing around is one thing," I said. "Posting pictures of me sleeping and calling me homeless? Telling people you need to keep the comedy content flowing? Sharing things I told you in confidence? That's not messing around. That's disrespect." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, you're being dramatic. You make jokes about me too." "No, I don't. I don't share private things you told. I don't mock you to my friends behind your back. I've never made you the butt of a joke in a room you weren't in." Her voice rose. "You're way too sensitive. If you can't handle a little fun?" "Fun?" I cut her off, my tone sharper now. "It's not fun for me. It's humiliating. And the worst part? You promised me you'd never disrespect. You said it over and over like it meant something to you." She set her mug down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the rim. "And you had no right to look at my phone. That's a violation. That's your focus right now? Not the fact that you've been tearing me down for laughs for months, maybe years? You're mad I saw it, not that you did it." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "You're twisting this into something it's not. Everyone jokes about their partner sometime. Not like this. Not with pictures. Not with stories meant to embarrass. Not with an audience cheering you on." She crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. "So what, you want me to apologize?" I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of genuine remorse. There wasn't any. Just irritation that she'd been caught. "I don't want an apology you don't mean," I said. "I want you to understand how much this has destroyed my trust, but I don't think you do." Silence stretched between us. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the faint sound of a car passing outside. Finally, she shook her head. "I think you're blowing this way out of proportion." That was the breaking point. Something in me just shut off. I felt cold, detached. "Then we're done," I said. Her eyes widened. "What? We're done? If you think this is acceptable, if you think I'm overreacting to being made a joke to your friends for months, then we don't have the same definition of respect, and I'm not going to keep pretending we do." She stared at like she was waiting for me to back down. When I didn't, her face hardened. "Fine, if that's how you want it." She stood, grabbed her phone, and walked to the bedroom. I heard drawers open, the sound of her pulling clothes out. 10 minutes later, she was at the door with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice cold. "Maybe," I replied, "but not as much as I'd regret staying." She slammed the door behind her. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the empty space she'd left. I'd expected to feel anger, maybe relief. Instead, I just felt hollow. The first few days after she left were quiet in a way that felt both peaceful and unnerving. I didn't have to hear her phone buzzing constantly, no random bursts of laughter from the other room. But I also didn't know what she was saying about me now that she was gone, and I was almost certain she was saying something. By the end of the week, mutual friends started acting strange. A couple of them stopped liking my posts on social media. One even sent me a vague, "I hope you're okay" text without explaining what it was about. It didn't take long to figure it out. Claire was telling people I'd broken into her phone and lost it over some harmless jokes. It was exactly the narrative I'd expected her to spin, painting herself as the victim, me as the controlling, humorless boyfriend. The old me might have stayed quiet, hoping people would figure out the truth on their own. But after reading that chat, after seeing just how far she was willing to go for a laugh, I wasn't leaving this to chance. I went through the screenshots I'd taken the day I found the messages. I hadn't originally planned to use them, but the more I saw her twisting the story, the more I realized I needed to protect myself. I didn't send them to everyone. We still had mutual acquaintances who didn't need to be dragged into it, but I picked a few key people I knew would hear her version and pass it along. I sent the screenshots without commentary, just a short message. This is what she calls harmless jokes. One of those people was Madison, a friend of hers I'd always gotten along. She replied almost immediately, "Oh my God. I didn't know she was posting those herself. I thought someone else took them." That stuck with me. If even her own friends hadn't realized the extent of it, then she'd been more two-faced than I thought. Madison told me she'd already been feeling distant from Claire because of some other stuff, and this just sealed. She didn't say what the other stuff was, but I could guess. Over the next week, I heard little bits and pieces from different corners. A couple of her friends apparently confronted her about the chat, and she'd lashed out, accusing them of taking my side. Another mutual acquaintance told me the group was kind of falling apart, because people were realizing they were all targets at one point or another. Apparently, the same group that had laughed at me had also been laughing at each other, just never to anyone's face. It was strange watching it unravel from a distance. I didn't feel triumphant exactly, but there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing the truth wasn't just mine to carry any. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after she left, I ran into one of her friends at a coffee shop. Her name was Sarah, and she'd always been polite to me but not overly close. She spotted me in line and walked over. "I just wanted to say," she began, "I saw some of the stuff from that chat. I'm sorry. I laughed at some of it at the time, but I didn't realize how far it went." "It was mean." I nodded, not sure what to say. "Thanks for saying that." "She's telling people you overreacted," Sarah continued. "But honestly, I don't think you did. I think you got out at the right time." It was the first real validation I'd gotten from someone in her circle, and it hit me harder than I expected. I realized then that I'd been carrying this knot of doubt, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too quick to end things. Hearing it from someone who'd been in the room when the jokes were being made gave me a kind of closure I hadn't known I needed. By the end of the month, I'd heard Claire had stopped talking to half the people who'd been in that group chat. A couple of them had even left the group entirely. The Queen Squad had apparently splintered into smaller cliques, each suspicious of the other. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. It was enough to know she was living in the same kind of atmosphere she'd created for me, one where you couldn't be sure if the people smiling at you weren't also laughing at you behind your back. The irony wasn't lost on. It was about 6 weeks after she left when her name lit up my phone again. No angry text this time. No cryptic insult passed through mutual friends. Just a simple, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long moment before replying. "About what?" Her answer came fast. "About us. I've been thinking a lot." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We chose a quiet cafe in the middle of the afternoon, the kind of place where conversation stayed between you and your coffee. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner, looking smaller somehow. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, a plain hoodie instead of the perfectly curated outfits she used to wear. "Thanks for coming," she said softly as I sat down. I didn't answer right away, just looked at her, waiting. I realize now that I messed up," she began, her hands twisting the paper sleeve of her coffee cup. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It was stupid. I got caught up in trying to be funny with them. It wasn't about you, not really. It was about making them laugh." I let out a humorless laugh. "It wasn't about me? You do realize I was the subject of half those jokes, right?" She winced. "I know, and I'm sorry. I thought you could handle it, I guess. That you'd know it didn't mean I didn't love you." I shook my head slowly. "Claire, you don't humiliate people you love. You don't take the things they tell you and trust and turn them into punchlines. That's not love. That's cruelty dressed up as humor." Her eyes flickered, and for a moment I saw the old defensiveness starting to surface, but she swallowed it down. "I just want a chance to fix it," she said quietly. "I miss you." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. I believed she missed, not because she'd suddenly realized the value of respect, but because her safety net was gone. I'd heard enough from mutual acquaintances to know her friend group had fractured. The Queen Squad was a memory now, and in its place were fragments of friendships too cautious to trust one another full. "Claire," I said, my voice. "The thing you don't understand is that trust isn't something you can patch over. Once it's gone, it's gone. I can't unsee what I saw. And even if you never did it again, I'd always be wondering if you were laughing at me when I wasn't around. That's no way to live." Her eyes shimmered, and she looked away. "So that's it? You're just done?" "I was done the moment you told me I was overreacting," I said. "That told me exactly how much my feelings meant to you, and nothing's changed." She nodded slowly, like she'd known the answer before she asked the question. "Okay," she said, barely above a whisper. She stood, left her coffee untouched, and walked out without looking back. I stayed there for a while after she left, watching the steam curl from my cup. There was no sense of victory, no rush of revenge, just a quiet clarity. She'd made her choice months ago. In every photo she shared, in every comment she typed with a little smirk. All I'd done was finally stop pretending not to notice. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life in small, deliberate ways. I spent more time with people who didn't need someone else to be the butt of the joke to have a good time. I stopped worrying about whether my hoodie was presentable enough for someone else's Instagram story. Every now and then, I'd hear something about her through the grapevine. She was dating someone new. She'd lost touch with more friends. Once, someone told me she'd been the subject of her new group's jokes, and the irony nearly made me laugh. But I didn't. It wasn't worth it. The truth was, I didn't need to see her get her karma. Knowing I'd walked away from someone who thought tearing me down was entertainment, that was enough. People talk a lot about love being tested in the hard times, but I think the real test is how someone treats you when you're not in the room. Respect isn't loud. It's not showy. It's quiet, steady, and constant. And once it's gone, no punchline in the world can bring it back.